Welcome, fellow LHS teachers, to my not so professionally done tutorial on the new and improved standards-based gradebook. As you may know or should know by now, the way we tabulate standards-based grades is changing, where you'll need to get an average of a number of components for each EQ to get an average for that student for that EQ. And then you'll need to average all of each student's EQ averages to get a total or final average as well as an iNow grade. So since this is far more complex than previously, I've created this handy dandy tutorial to hopefully help you. I do, however, give the disclaimer that I am not actually an Excel spreadsheet expert. So if you have any questions outside of what I put into this video, you'll have to do what I did, and that's resort to Google and YouTube. But one way or another, hopefully this helps you at least get started. So let's get going. When you pull up the attached spreadsheet, this is roughly what you're going to see. I say roughly because these fields here will be blank as well as this column here. I've taken the liberty of putting some stuff in ahead of time, but yours would be blank. Other than that, it's the same. So first thing you would need to do is save a copy of this blank template, because you might need it again if you want to do multiple classes separately, or if you wanted to do a different 9 weeks and so on and so forth and repeat this whole process, you need a copy of this. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm just going to save this on my desktop, and you can name it whatever you want here, and then you would click Save. I am going to click Cancel because I've already saved mine and don't need to do so again. So once you've got it saved, you're going to modify it for whatever class period you so choose. So the first thing you would need to do is type your demographic information in up here. This step is optional, but you're welcome to do it if you want to. Type your subject, your name, the period of the day that you are working with, and the grading period or the 9 weeks. All of that goes up here. After you have that inputted, you will need to type your students' names in this column here. I've taken the liberty of putting some bogus names in just for the sake of an example, but you of course would type your actual student names here. All of this should be review for those of you who have done this before. Okay, so now that you've got your student names put in and your demographic information up here, you're going to need to modify this sheet for the correct number of components for EQ1. Notice that this sheet, if you look at the bottom down here, is just EQ1. It does not encompass all your EQs. We'll get to the subsequent EQs in just a second. So you see up at the top, I've got C1, C2, C3, and so on. Those would be components 1, component 2, component 3, and so on and so forth. And I've got all the way out to 24. You may have more or less components for EQ1 than what I have provided. If you have less components than 24, you're going to need to delete some of these columns. So the first thing you would do is click in this cell here, right click, click delete, click entire column, and click OK. And as you can see, it gets rid of that entire column, and now we only have 23 components. I'm going to hit undo, so bring back my 24th component. Now say you want more components than 24. Click in this cell here, right click, go to Insert, and then hit entire column and OK. And you see it's added a column and it's blank, but you're welcome to put C25 there or whatever you think is appropriate. You can repeat these steps to delete or add columns as you so choose or as needed for that particular EQ. Again, I will hit undo to restore everything to the original perspective. So that should set you up for the correct number of components for EQ1, as well as your demographics and all of your student names. The next thing you're going to want to do is create another sheet on this same book for your second EQ or EQ2. So down here at the bottom, what we're going to do to save a little time is right-click, click Move or Copy, and I'm going to place this before the EQ average, check Create a Copy, and click OK. And it makes a copy. So this is an exact copy of the one that we previously had. Notice, however, it is not the correct name. So we're going to rename it EQ2 by right-clicking on it and clicking Rename. And we're going to simply type EQ2. Click anywhere and you're done. So now we've created an exact copy, so that way your demographics get copied and all of your student names get copied, so you do not have to type all of that in again. However, you may have to make some modifications. Since this is EQ2, you're going to want to change the number of components, like you see up here, to match with however many components you have for EQ2. Again, you can go back and rewind this video to see how to do that and change it accordingly, but that sets up EQ2. You would then repeat these steps to create EQ3, EQ4, and however many of them you have until you've completed all of them. I feel sorry for those of you who have many EQs, but that's the way it goes sometimes. All right. So we've got EQ1 set up, EQ2 set up. In my case, they're identical, but you may have modified the number of components appropriately. And that leads us to EQ average. So if we click down here on EQ average, this one in your case is going to be blank as far as names and demographics. Therefore, you will have to re-enter those pieces of information. There was no way around doing that because this one is set up a little bit differently. So sorry for the extra work, but you do have to enter names again and demographics again. Once you've got that done, you can do the same thing we did with components to the number of EQs. So I've got 24 EQs here, but you're welcome to go back and use the same steps we used on components to get rid of or add EQs as necessary. So you would reduce this or expand this to match with the number of EQs you're going to be covering in that grading period. I'm just going to leave mine the same for the sake of time. Okay, so to recap, we've entered demographics and names on EQ1. We changed the number of components to match with however many components we had on EQ1. We've created EQ2 and done the same, and you could have created other EQs and done the same as well. Now what we need to do is get the Excel spreadsheet to take the students' averages from these EQs, 1 and 2, and drop them into the appropriate box by their name under EQ1 and EQ2, and the Excel spreadsheet will average them for us as well as give their iNow grade. So the way to do this, go click back on EQ1 sheet, and we're going to simply click and drag or highlight the entire column under, not C1, pardon, I said this wasn't a professional video, so bear with me, the average column, not C1. Highlight the whole entire average column, right click and do copy, and you'll see it makes a little border around it. Then click on EQ average, go back to that sheet, and we're going to highlight all of the EQ1 column. Once we've got it highlighted, we right-click, and we're going to go to this little icon here, which is Paste Link. So we click that, and of course it drops all these little pound signs or hashtag symbols or whatever you call them here because we don't have any values inputted yet. But what we have just done is told the Excel book that we want all of these values, each student's average value for that EQ, dropped here under EQ1. We can simply repeat the same thing for EQ2, EQ3, and however many of them you have. So if I go to EQ2, highlight or drag down and highlight the entire average column, right-click, copy, go back to EQ average, under EQ2 because I copied the values from EQ2, here, right-click, and paste link, this little icon out here, like so. If I had other EQs, I would do the same thing until I filled them all in. So now what will happen as you enter values for your students is that their average for that EQ will show up here, and that value will be copied to your EQ average. And you see there EQ3 has an average on it. EQ2 does not because we did not enter any values for it yet. But if we go back, we could enter some values. This is Sally Smarty Pants, so we're going to assume she got all 3s, so on. Under EQ average now she's got values, so you see it averages them and gives her an iNow grade. Once you have entered all the values, or at any point if you wish to save your work, you could simply go to File, Save As, and save it wherever you so choose. I hope this video was helpful for you, at least a little bit. If you have any questions, again, I may or may not be able to answer them. Do the best that I can. I apologize for the extra work that you will have to do to set this up, but please don't hate me for that. I did the best that I could, and I'm not doing any more because it's late and I'm tired. You have a good evening and good luck.